The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It clung to the windows of the Greywood bus, streaking down like veins on a dying body. Samuel Hart sat by the window, watching the forest blur past in muted shades of black and green. He wasn't supposed to be here. If anyone had asked, he would have said he hated small towns, hated forests, hated the suffocating quiet. But letters have a way of dragging people where they swore they'd never return. The letter had come 2 weeks ago. No return address. The handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp and jagged, as if written in a rush. It read, "Samuel Hart, you must come back to Greywood. Your father's house cannot remain empty. The town won't allow it. Neither will they. You'll understand when you arrive. Do not delay." The strange part was not the words, but the fact that Samuel's father had been dead for nearly 20 years. The bus rattled to a stop at the only station in town. The driver, a man with a gray cap pulled low over his brow, gave Samuel a long, unreadable look before saying, "End of the line." His voice was heavy, as though he pitied Samuel for stepping into Greywood. The town hadn't changed. The same sagging rooftops, the same shuttered shops with peeling paint. The air smelled faintly of wet soil and pine needles, but beneath it lingered something rancid, something metallic, like old blood dried on wood. The house waited at the end of Hollow Street. It stood crooked, leaning against the weight of years, with windows like blind eyes staring into the mist. Samuel froze when he saw it. He remembered standing in that yard as a boy, watching his father scream at shadows no one else could see. He remembered the nights when walls bled water, when whispers crawled through the halls, when his mother packed a suitcase and left, never to return. Yet here it was, the house he swore he'd never set foot in again. The key was waiting under the mat, exactly where his father used to leave it. Samuel's fingers trembled as he unlocked the door. The smell hit him first: damp wood, mold, and something sharper, copper again. The air inside felt heavier, as though it hadn't been breathed in decades. His footsteps echoed in the dark hallway, each creak of the floorboards sounding like a voice answering back. On the dining room table, a candle burned. Samuel froze. He hadn't lit it. No one had. Yet the wax dripped fresh, and the flame swayed as though disturbed by a breath. Pinned beneath the candle was another letter, the same jagged handwriting. "You came back. Good. Do not leave. They will be here tonight. The house remembers you, Samuel, and it remembers what your father did." Samuel's chest tightened. His father's madness had destroyed their family, but deep inside, he had always suspected it wasn't madness at all. The house was wrong. The walls whispered. The mirrors showed things that weren't there, and the basement door was always locked with rusted chains. That night, as the rain lashed harder against the house, Samuel sat awake in the living room, the candle guttering beside him. The whispers began at midnight, at first faint, like wind slipping under the door, but then clearer. Samuel, his name, over and over, in voices that shifted from a childlike to guttural, weaving through the walls. The shadows moved differently from the light. They crawled slower, deliberate, as though aware. The grandfather clock struck 1, and something shuffled in the hallway. Samuel rose, heart hammering. He had left the door open, but now it was closed. The knob turned slowly, rattling against the frame. He grabbed the candle, the only light in the suffocating dark. The door creaked open. Nothing, just the hallway. Empty, but the floorboards were wet. Fresh footprints led from the door to the basement. Bare feet, small, like a child's. The chains on the basement door rattled. Then, one link snapped. Samuel stumbled back, whispering, "No, no, not again." The basement had been forbidden when he was a child. His father used to sit in front of that door for hours, whispering prayers in a language Samuel didn't understand. Once, Samuel had tried to open it. He still remembered the terror in his father's eyes, the way his hands shook as he shouted, "If you ever open that door, they'll take you too." Now, the lock was breaking on its own. Another snap. The chains fell loose, slithering onto the wet floor like dead snakes. The basement door creaked open. The darkness below was thicker than shadow, as if it had weight. A stench rolled out, damp, mold, and rot, and from within it, a voice whispered, "Welcome home, Samuel." Samuel's breath caught in his throat. The basement gaped open like a wound, exhaling the stench of rot and damp stone. He gripped the candle tighter, its small flame trembling as if it feared the darkness below. For a moment, he considered running, back to the bus stop, back to anywhere but here. But the letter's words clawed at him. The house remembers you, and it remembers what your father did. The staircase into the basement groaned as he stepped down. The wood was slick with moisture, each board bowing under his weight. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to thicken until the flame barely lit more than an arm's length ahead. At the bottom, the basement stretched wide, lined with stone walls damp with black streaks. Old furniture lay rotting in corners. A broken chair, a mattress crawling with mold, crates gnawed by rats. But what caught his eye was the sigil on the far wall. It had been carved into the stone, deep, jagged, and deliberate. A circle filled with intersecting lines, like a spider's web drawn by a trembling hand. At its center, the stone bulged outward, blackened, as though scorched by fire. Samuel staggered closer. He had seen it before. As a boy, he'd once spied through the basement keyhole, watching his father kneel before this very wall, whispering, bleeding from his palms, as though the stone demanded it. The whispers returned now, swelling around him, a chorus of voices, some weeping, some laughing, some nothing more than ragged breath. "Who's there?" Samuel shouted, though his voice cracked. The candle flickered, and in that brief stutter of light, figures appeared along the edges of the room, pale outlines, their faces blurred, their bodies gaunt and twisted. They stared without eyes, their heads jerking in unnatural motions. The candlelight steadied, and they were gone. Only the sigil remained, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. Samuel's knees weakened. He stumbled back against the wall, his chest pounding. Then he heard the footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate, boots on the wooden floorboards above. He wasn't alone. Samuel hurried up the stairs, nearly extinguishing the flame in his rush. The basement door loomed at the top, but as he reached for it, It slammed shut in his face. He twisted the knob. It was locked. Open, he shouted, slamming his fists against the wood. Who's there? Silence. Then, scratching from the other side. Long, deliberate scratches, like nails dragging down the door. The sound set his teeth on edge, digging into his skull. Stop it, he cried, pressing his hands to his ears. But the sound grew louder, deeper, until it no longer seemed like scratches, but claws raking through the wood. The candle sputtered. A drop of wax burned his hand. He screamed, and suddenly the door burst open, throwing him onto the floor of the hallway. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed him whole. Samuel's hands shook as he lit a match from the box he'd found in the basement. The flame cast a sickly glow across the hallway. The floorboards were gouged, splintered where the scratching had been, and across the walls, his name, over and over, Samuel, 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 written in long, jagged slashes. The match burned to his fingers. He hissed and dropped it. The flame sputtered out. And again, he was blind. Something breathed behind him. He spun, fumbling for another match. But his shaking hands dropped the box. Matches scattered across the wet floorboards. He froze, straining to hear. The breathing was heavy, too close. He forced himself to bend, searching blindly for a match. His fingers found one, struck it, flame flared, and a face loomed inches from his own. It was pale, stretched, with eyes like pits of black tar, its jaw unhinged, opening too wide, splitting the skin at the corners. Samuel screamed, stumbling back. The match died, plunging the up hallway into blackness again. He crawled blindly, heart hammering against his ribs. When he lit the next match, the hallway was empty, but the footprints were back. Wet, bare feet, leading not to the basement this time, but to his bedroom upstairs. Samuel hesitated at the bottom of the staircase. His old bedroom door was ajar, a faint glow spilling out. Impossible, since the house had no power. He climbed, each step groaning, as if warning him away. The glow grew brighter, flickering like candlelight. His room was exactly as he remembered. The peeling wallpaper with faded rocket ships, the small wooden bed frame, the desk littered with old crayons and notebooks, except now, candles lined every surface, their flames wavering in unison, and on the bed sat a child. Samuel's stomach dropped. The boy was maybe 8 years old, with dark hair, pale skin, and wide, hollow eyes. His legs swung back and forth as he hummed a tune Samuel half remembered from his own childhood. "Who are you?" Samuel whispered. The boy tilted his head. "You know who I am." Samuel's voice cracked. "No, you're not real." The boy smiled. His teeth were too sharp. Father thought the same thing. He tried to keep the house quiet, but it remembers Samuel. It never forgets. Samuel shook his head, backing toward the door. "You're not me. You can't be me." The boy's smile widened until his face split unnaturally, stretching ear to ear. His voice doubled, layered with a guttural echo. "I am what was left behind when you escaped. I am the part that never left this house." The candles flared, their flames reaching toward the ceiling like grasping fingers. Samuel turned and fled, slamming the door behind him. The house shuddered with laughter, high-pitched, childlike, yet cruel. He bolted into the living room, panting, sweat slick on his face. The front door stood only a few feet away. He could leave, run, never come back. But when he grabbed the handle, it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard he pulled, the door refused to open. The boy's voice drifted through the walls. You can't leave, Samuel. Not yet. Not until you remember what he did in the basement. The whispers swelled again, louder, more insistent. The walls pulsed, as if alive, the floorboards buckling beneath his feet. Samuel dropped to his knees, clutching his head, as the voices screamed in unison. Remember, the house roared like a living thing, and Samuel realized with dawning horror, it wasn't the house that had gone mad. It was his father, and whatever had driven him to madness was still here, waiting. The storm outside raged harder, wind clawing at the windows like a desperate animal. The whole house shuddered under the weight of it, but Samuel barely noticed. His mind spun with fragments of memory. His father's wide, terrified eyes, the endless nights of whispering through the walls, the smell of blood and damp stone, the voices pressed at him still, rising and falling like waves. They didn't come from one direction, but from everywhere. The ceiling, the floorboards, the very air he breathed. He clutched his temples, teeth grinding. Stop, he shouted. His voice cracked like brittle glass. But the voices didn't stop. They laughed. They wept. They chanted, and beneath the cacophony, Samuel heard something new, a steady, rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat, but deeper. It was coming from the basement. He stood at the top of the stairs, candle in hand, staring into the gaping black below. The air was colder now, thick with the stench of rot. Every instinct screamed at him to stay away. But the whispers sharpened, almost intelligible now, hissing fragments that burrowed into his skull. Down. You must go down. He left it there. He left us there. Samuel gritted his teeth. What did he leave? What do you want from me? The candle flickered violently, then steadied. The whispers fell silent, as if waiting. Samuel descended. Each step groaned beneath him, slick with moisture. The candle flame bent toward the basement, as though drawn to something unseen. His breath came ragged, clouding in the icy air. When he reached the bottom, the sigil on the far wall glistened wetly, as though freshly carved. Black liquid seeped from the grooves, dripping onto the floor in thick rivulets. It smelled of iron and rot, and in the center of the room stood a chair, Samuel remembered, the same high-backed wooden seat his father had dragged down there countless nights. Its legs were gouged with scratches, as though something or someone had fought desperately against being tied to it. Ropes still dangled from its arms, stiff and dark with old blood. Samuel's stomach churned. He staggered forward, candle trembling. His father's voice echoed faintly in memory. Words Samuel had long buried. I can hold them back. I can bind them. But it costs blood, Samuel. Always blood. The chair was a prison, a vessel. His father had used it to contain whatever the house demanded, and now it waited, empty. A sudden crash shattered the silence. Samuel whipped around. One of the crates in the corner had toppled. Something moved behind it. Who's there? His voice wavered. The crate scraped across the floor, shoved from the inside. The candlelight caught pale fingers curling over its edge. Then a face rose, slowly into view. It was a woman, or what remained of one. Her skin was gray, stretched taut over bone. Her hair matted with filth. Her eyes were hollow sockets. Yet Samuel felt her gaze burn into him. She crawled out, limbs jerking like a broken marionette. Her jaw hung slack, opening wider and wider until it split with a wet crack. Samuel stumbled back, nearly dropping the candle. Stay away. But she didn't advance. She only pointed one long trembling finger toward the chair. Samuel's chest tightened. What do you want me to do? Her voice rasped, broken and layered with echoes. Sit, or bind, or bleed. Before Samuel could respond, the figure convulsed, her body snapping in unnatural angles before collapsing into a heap of rot. The smell of decay flooded the room, and when Samuel blinked, she was gone. The ropes on the chair writhed, as though alive, twisting and tightening in anticipation. Samuel staggered back upstairs, gasping for air. He slammed the basement door shut, pressing his back to it, as though that could hold the darkness below. But the house would not let him rest. The boy was waiting in the hallway, grinning, eyes glinting with malice. You saw it, didn't you? The boy whispered. You saw what he did. Samuel shook his head. I don't know what this is. I don't care what my father did. I'm leaving. You can't leave. The boy's voice was calm, almost amused. Not until you finish what he started. I don't even know what he started. Samuel snapped. The boy's grin widened unnaturally, splitting his cheeks. Then remember, the walls convulsed. Paint bubbled. Wood splintered. A low moan reverberated through the house, like a beast stirring from slumber. And suddenly, Samuel was no longer in the hallway. He was standing in the past. The house was brighter, cleaner, the wallpaper intact, the floors polished. He smelled his mother's cooking, heard the faint laughter of a boy, his younger self, playing in the yard, outside, and in the basement. His father knelt before the sigil, chanting in a language Samuel didn't recognize. His palms bled freely, smearing crimson into the grooves of the stone. Samuel tried to move, to shout, but he was only a witness, a phantom. His father's voice rose in desperation. I bind you. I bind you with my blood, with my body, with my soul. You will not have him. You will not take my son. The house shook violently. The sigil glowed, pulsing like a living thing. From the shadows, shapes writhed, figures with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, reaching for him. His father screamed, wrenching a knife across his palm, pressing the wound to the wall. Take me instead. The vision shattered. Samuel gasped, back in the present, clutching the staircase banister. His heart thundered. His father hadn't been insane. He had been sacrificing himself, night after night, binding something within the house, and now, with his father gone, the bindings had rotted away. The boy appeared again, sitting atop the banister like a perched crow. His grin was sharper now, teeth glinting in the dim light. You understand, don't you? Samuel's voice was hoarse. He wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting me. The boy nodded slowly. And now it's your turn. The floor beneath Samuel split with a deafening crack. Black hands surged up from the boards, clawing at his legs, dragging him toward the basement. He screamed, clawing at the banister, but the hands were too strong. The boy's laughter echoed through the house, shrill and endless. Welcome back, Samuel, the boy hissed. The house remembers, and it's hungry. Samuel was pulled into the dark. The darkness swallowed him whole. Samuel thrashed against the black hands, pulling him down, his nails tearing against splintered wood. He gasped, choked, clawed for anything solid. But the house was merciless. The floorboards yawned wide like a maw, dragging him deeper until the world above vanished. He landed hard on damp stone. The air was suffocating, rank with mildew and iron. He coughed, chest heaving, the taste of blood in his mouth. When his eyes adjusted, he realized he was in the basement again. But it was not the same basement. The walls stretched impossibly far, slick with black mold that pulsed faintly, like veins under diseased skin. The sigil still marked the far wall, but it had grown, sprawling across the entire chamber, glowing faint red as if lit from within. The ropes on the chair writhed and twisted like living serpents, and at the center of the room, a figure knelt. Samuel's heart stopped. It was his father, not as he remembered in life, but broken, hunched, skin stretched thin over bone. His eyes were hollow pits, his lips torn and cracked. Blood dripped endlessly from his palms, pooling on the stone, feeding the glowing sigil. Father? Samuel whispered, his voice cracked with disbelief. The figure's head turned slowly, too slowly, bones grinding with the movement. Samuel, the voice was his father's, but layered with something deeper, something monstrous. You should not have come back. Samuel's chest tightened. What is this? What did you do? His father's form convulsed, coughing dark fluid onto the ground. I bound them with my blood, with my body. I kept them here for you. His voice shook with agony. But the house, it never forgets. It never forgives. It wanted you, Samuel. It always wanted you. Samuel shook his head violently. No, no, this isn't real. You're dead. You've been dead for 20 years. The figure rose unsteadily to its feet, towering over him. Chains dragged from its wrists, rattling with each movement. Dead? Yes. And yet I remain. Because the house keeps what it claims. Samuel stumbled back, candle shaking in his hand. You can't be him. The figure's head tilted, bones cracking. Then why do I remember your screams as a child? Why do I remember the way you begged me not to go into the basement? Samuel's throat tightened. The memories clawed at him. His father's bloodied hands. The nights filled with screams, muffled through the floor. The way he had hidden under blankets, praying for silence. The figure took a step closer. Sit in the chair, Samuel. Bind them. Continue the sacrifice, or they will take everything. The ropes on the chair writhed eagerly, slapping against the floor like snakes tasting the air. No, Samuel breathed. I won't do it. I won't give myself to this house. His father's hollow face twisted into a grin, the skin splitting at the corners of his mouth. Then you will feed it another way. The walls shook violently. The sigil flared red, casting the basement in a hellish glow. Shapes peeled away from the walls, dozens of them, pale and twisted, their mouths gaping, their limbs jerking in spasms. They crawled toward Samuel, their nails clicking against the stone. Samuel bolted. He darted up the staircase, but the steps stretched endlessly upward, spiraling into the dark without end. The whispers grew deafening, voices chanting his name. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, but the top never came closer. The pale figures clawed up behind him, their hollow eyes fixed on him. One seized his ankle. He kicked violently, bones snapping beneath his heel. Another lunged, teeth snapping, at his calf. He screamed, and suddenly, he wasn't on the stairs anymore. He was in the kitchen. The candle sputtered, nearly extinguished. Samuel spun wildly, heart hammering. The house was toying with him, bending space, reshaping time. The kitchen was just as he remembered from childhood. The old wooden table, the cracked sink, the peeling cupboards. But everything was rotted now, black with mold. Rats skittered across the counters, their eyes glowing faintly red. On the table sat a plate, and on the plate, a heart. It was fresh, wet, still beating. Samuel gagged, stumbling back. The boy appeared in the corner of the room, grinning as always, swinging his legs like a child at play. Hungry? The boy asked. His voice was sing-song. What do you want from me? Samuel shouted. His voice cracked, breaking into hysteria. The boy tilted his head. The same thing Father gave. The same thing you will give. Blood. Yours or theirs. Samuel's skin crawled. There is no theirs. There's only me. The boy's grin widened until his jaw split unnaturally. His voice doubled, layered, with a guttural growl. The town, the people, they fed the house, Samuel. That's why it still stands, why it still breathes. They gave it pieces of themselves. Your father gave more, and now you will finish it. Samuel staggered back, bile burning his throat. You're lying. The boy giggled, a hollow, echoing sound. Am I? Ask the neighbors. Ask the graves. Graywood has always belonged to the house. The candles in the kitchen flared, casting long shadows. The boy's face split, peeling away until only darkness gaped where his features should be. Samuel screamed and fled. He crashed into the hallway, his candle nearly snuffed out by the rush of air. The front door loomed ahead. He lunged for it, seized the knob, yanked with all his strength. This time, it opened. Samuel stumbled into the storm, rain drenching him instantly. He fell to his knees in the mud, gasping, laughing hysterically. He was free. He was outside. The house couldn't hold him anymore. But then he looked up. The town was gone, where Graywood should have been. Streets, shops, houses. There was nothing but endless forest, black and silent under the storm. The bus station, the road, everything had vanished. Only trees surrounded the house now, stretching endlessly in all directions. And behind him, the house groaned. Its windows glowed faint red. Its roof seemed to rise higher, its walls pulsing like flesh. The structure was alive, breathing, watching him. Samuel stumbled back, shaking his head. No, no, this isn't real. The boy's voice echoed from the trees. You can't run, Samuel. There's nowhere left to go. The house is the world now, and you belong to it. Lightning split the sky. For an instant, Samuel saw them, figures, standing among the trees. Dozens, hundreds, pale, hollow-eyed, all facing him, their mouths opened as one, and the storm fell silent. Then, in perfect unison, they whispered his name. Samuel. The sound rolled through the forest like thunder, rattling his bones, shaking his soul. He ran. He didn't know where, didn't care. Branches tore his skin. Mud swallowed his shoes. Rain blinded him. He just ran. But no matter how far he went, no matter how fast, the house was always ahead of him. Samuel's lungs burned as he sprinted through the endless forest. Branches whipped at his face, roots snared his ankles, mud clung to his legs like shackles. Still, he ran. He had to put distance between himself and the house. But no matter which direction he turned, the trees thinned eventually, and the house stood waiting, always the same crooked silhouette, its windows glowing faintly red, its roofline rising higher than before. It was growing. Samuel stumbled into a clearing, collapsing onto his knees. Rain plastered his hair to his face, his chest heaving in shallow gasps. He pressed his hands into the mud, sobbing with frustration. This isn't real. This isn't real. Lightning split the sky. When he looked up, he wasn't in the forest anymore. He was standing in the Greywood town square. The storm was gone. The night was eerily still, the air heavy with silence. The square was just as he remembered. Cobblestone streets, the old clock tower looming above, shop fronts lining the road. But everything was abandoned. Windows gaped empty. Doors swung on, rusted hinges. No lights, no voices, no life. Samuel rose shakily to his feet. Hello? His voice cracked, too loud in the suffocating stillness. A whisper answered, Samuel. It came from every direction at once, rolling through the empty streets like wind. He spun, heart hammering. Who's there? The clock tower groaned, its hands ticking forward, though the bell had long since rusted. The sound reverberated through the square, like a heartbeat, and then he saw them. Figures lined the rooftops, dozens of them, pale and still, watching him with hollow eyes. Their limbs dangled loosely, their heads cocked at unnatural angles. One by one, they began to climb down. Their movements were jerky, insect-like, limbs bending the wrong way as they scuttled down walls and across cobblestones. Samuel backed toward the center of the square, candle trembling in his grip. Stay back. They didn't listen. The figures circled him, closer, closer, their whispers building into a deafening chant, his name over and over, layered and endless. Samuel, Samuel, Samuel. He clamped his hands over his ears, screaming, Stop it! The chant cut off instantly. The silence was worse. Then, from the center of the crowd, a figure stepped forward. It was the boy. He looked the same as always, small, pale, dark hair clinging to his forehead. But now, his grin was gone. His face was solemn, his hollow eyes glinting with something unreadable. You can't run from it, the boy said softly. His voice carried through the square, echoing unnaturally. The house is everywhere. The town is inside it. You're inside it. There's no leaving. Samuel's knees trembled. Why me? Why does it want me? The boy tilted his head. Because you're the only one left. Your father fed it for years. The town fed it before him. But the sacrifices stopped. The house is starving. Samuel shook his head violently. No, I won't give it anything. I won't sit in that chair. The boy's expression darkened. His mouth stretched into an unnatural grin, splitting his cheeks. His voice deepened, layered with guttural echoes. Then it will take what it wants. The figures lunged. Samuel bolted, shoving through them, candle guttering wildly. Cold hands clawed at his clothes, tearing fabric, scraping his skin. He broke free, sprinting down an alley. The streets twisted unnaturally, folding back on themselves. No matter where he turned, the house was ahead, looming larger each time. Its walls pulsed, windows bleeding red light. The front door yawned open, like a mouth waiting to swallow him. Samuel fell to his knees, sobbing. Why me? The boy appeared in the doorway. His grin gleamed like a knife. Because you were always meant for it. Your father only delayed the inevitable. Samuel staggered inside. The door slammed behind him. The house groaned, its walls shuddering, floors buckling beneath his feet. The air was suffocating, thick with the stench of mold and iron. The whispers rose again, louder than ever, a chorus of desperate voices clawing at his mind. He stumbled through the hallway, the wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing flesh beneath, wet and glistening. The floorboards pulsed like veins. Blood seeped from the ceiling, dripping onto his face. He screamed, wiping at his eyes, but the blood wouldn't stop. It coated him, clung to him, sank into his skin. The voices screamed with him, sit, sit, sit. The ropes dragged across the floor, slithering toward him. The chair waited in the living room, glowing faintly with unnatural light. Samuel fell to his knees before it. His body shook, his mind fracturing. He couldn't fight anymore. The house was in his blood, in his bones, in his soul. His father appeared beside the chair, hollow-eyed, chains rattling. It's the only way, he rasped. Bind them, hold them, feed the house, or it will consume the world. Samuel wept, clutching his head. I can't. I won't. The boy leaned close, whispering into his ear. You don't have a choice. The ropes snapped around his wrists. They tightened instantly, biting into his skin, cutting deep until blood poured freely. The chair groaned beneath him, the wood splintering. The sigil flared through the floor, burning into the walls, the ceiling, the sky itself. The house screamed. The sound was inhuman, a shriek that split the world. Windows shattered, walls convulsed, the floor buckled, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. Thousands of voices screaming in unison. The figures poured from the walls, pale and endless, their hollow eyes fixed on Samuel. They clawed at him, tore at him, but the ropes held him fast. His blood spilled freely, soaking into the floor, feeding the pulsing sigil. The boy stood before him, smiling wide. Now you understand, he whispered. The house doesn't want your life. It wants your eternity. You are the sacrifice. You are the binding. Forever. Samuel screamed, the sound swallowed by the roaring house. His blood burned as it seeped into the floor, fusing with the sigil, with the wood, with the walls. He felt himself unravel. His body dissolved into the house, his mind splintered, his soul stretched thin. He was everywhere. The walls, the floor, the whispers. He was the house, and the house was hungry. Somewhere, far above, the storm cleared. The townsfolk of Greywood, what few remained, stepped from their houses, staring at the old mansion on Hollow Street. Its windows glowed faintly, its roofline taller than before, and from within they heard a new voice join the whispers. Samuel's voice, crying, laughing, begging, forever. For a time, there was only darkness. Samuel floated in it, weightless, bodiless, his mind fraying into strands of static. He could hear the house breathing, the endless chorus of whispers surrounding him, pressing into him until he could no longer tell where his thoughts ended and theirs began. Samuel, stay, feed, forever. He wanted to scream, but he no longer had a mouth. He wanted to run, but he no longer had legs. He was a thread in the fabric now, woven into the wood and stone, the rot and blood. The house pulsed with him. He pulsed with it. Time lost meaning. Days bled into nights. Nights bled into nothing. He felt the forest shift outside, felt the roots digging deeper, the trees bending closer, the soil swallowing all trace of the world beyond. He felt the town, too, the people who had remained, their fear like a faint warmth feeding the house from afar. Every time someone whispered about Hollow Street, every time a child dared run past the mansion's gate, he felt it, the attention, the hunger, the offering, but most of all, he felt the others. His father's voice whispered beside him in the walls, ragged and broken. I tried, Samuel. I tried to contain it. I gave it everything, but it always needed more. Samuel wanted to tell him he understood, that he hated him, that he forgave him, but the words tangled in the whispers, lost forever. The boy was here too, always laughing, always grinning, darting between shadows. His voice taunted Samuel, day and night, though there was no longer difference. You're one of us now. You belong. Doesn't it feel good to stop running? Samuel wanted to say no, but he couldn't deny the truth that crawled inside his hollow chest. Part of him did feel relief. There was no more fighting, no more choice, only surrender, only the house. And then, one night, or what felt like night, he sensed movement at the door, a presence, a soul. The front gate creaked. Footsteps crunched against the overgrown path. A child's voice whispered, trembling, dare you to go inside? Another voice, hesitant, no way. My brother said people never come out. They're just stories, scary stories. Then you go first. Samuel felt them approach, the heat of their blood, the rhythm of their heartbeats. Two boys, no older than 10. Their curiosity blazed like a lantern in the dark, drawing the house's attention, drawing him. The door groaned open. Samuel screamed silently, thrashing against his unseen bindings. He wanted to warn them, to drive them away, but the house rejoiced, surging with hunger, pushing his will down. muffling him with the chorus. The boys stepped inside. The air thickened. The candles flared. The ropes on the chair stirred. Eager. The house whispered with 1,000 voices, and Samuel heard his own among them, twisted and broken. Welcome home. The boys froze. One dropped his flashlight, the beam skittering across the floor. Their eyes widened, breaths quickening, and then they ran. The door slammed behind them, rattling the windows. The forest swallowed their screams as they fled down the road, never looking back. The house groaned in disappointment. The whispers seethed, but Samuel felt something else. Relief. For a moment, just a moment, he'd pushed back. Not enough to stop the house forever, but enough to drive them away. Years passed. Graywood withered. Families left. Shops closed. The forest encroached, swallowing roads and fields. Only a handful of stubborn souls remained, too poor or too old to leave. And always, the house stood on Hollow Street, taller, darker, hungrier. Some nights, its windows glowed faint red. Some nights, voices leaked from its walls, drifting down empty streets. Children dared one another to approach, to touch the rotting gate, to throw stones at the darkened windows. None ever crossed the threshold again. Inside, Samuel waited. The hunger never stopped. The whispers never ended. But deep inside the walls, in the slivers of himself that remained, he clung to the memory of that night. The boys running, the door slamming, his voice, his true voice, forcing its way through the endless roar just long enough to scare them away. And he wondered, maybe one day, someone stronger would come, someone who wouldn't be bound, someone who could burn the house down, break the sigil, scatter the whispers. Maybe one day, the hollow house would fall. Until then, he would endure, not as a man, not as a son, not even as Samuel anymore, but as the house. And the house would always be waiting. Epilogue Graywood became a ghost town within a generation. Travelers who passed through whispered about the ruins, about the strange lights on Hollow Street, the sound of laughter echoing through the forest, the way the mansion seemed closer, no matter where you stood. They said if you pressed your ear to the walls, you could hear a man crying. They said if you stayed too long, the crying would turn into laughter. And they said the house was alive, hungry, waiting forever.